Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Getting back to work on the Cobra in this video. This one is going to be continuing up on the rear end as far as getting the rear end buttoned up and getting the rear brakes all sorted out. Going back to my whole rear suspension upgrade that turned into somewhat of a debacle and a much bigger project than expected. So that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get the camera turned around and get to work on the rear end. All right, so I'm working on buttoning up the rear end first so I can stop smelling this wonderful smell of gear oil and limited slip friction modifier. So here is the cover I pulled off. I've gone ahead and cleaned it up, went over with a wire wheel, removed all the old sealer, and I actually removed the girdle brace bolts, which you can see right there. One of the things I wanted to check out is the whole time I've had this, it's leaked from these holes. And I put some sealer on the threads, like from behind. I backed them all the way out, sealed, put them in. Well, if you look in the holes, it's probably hard to see. The threads on these holes are only like at the very bottom. And then it just goes to open there. You can kind of see it there. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put thread sealer on the actual girdle bolts and then put them back through from the inside all the way flush with the cover so that they're not going to be impacting the or hitting the caps until I have everything tightened, and then I'll run them back down and torque them. So this is all cleaned up. I just need to go over both mating flanges with some brake cleaner once, and then like I said, I'm going to go ahead and get ARP thread sealer on those threads from the inside, and that should solve my leaking problems hopefully going forward. So I'm gonna go ahead and get to work on getting this reinstalled. All right, reinstalled the girdle bolts and I put the ARP thread sealer on them so they're good to go. I'm gonna go ahead and put some right stuff around the cover. I went ahead and I've already cleaned this off with brake parts cleaner and it's shop towel, and I've done the same with the axle under there. So I'm gonna get some right stuff on here and then start getting this thing bolted up. And there you go, rear cover reinstalled. All the bolts, I torqued them to 22 foot-pounds. The instructions that I found on like the Moser website for the real version of this cover, not the cheap knockoff, said 25 maximum, so I figured I'll go a little under maximum. Next thing is gonna be the girdle bolts, get those torqued down and get the keeper, the lock nuts installed as well. I'll come back once that's done. All right, and there you go, the the load bolts for the main cap girdle. Those get torqued to 5 foot-pounds or 60 inch-pounds, and then you just go ahead and put the jam nuts on afterwards and get those torqued down. So all set there. Everything is good with the rear cover. I'm gonna let this dry before I bother topping anything off as far as fluids go. Quick update while I'm waiting for the sealer to dry on the cover. Went ahead, reinstalled the rotors with the little spacer that's required for the kit that I have using these rotors. Again, this is the oversized, more modern Cobra rear rotors. It's a kit that came from Super Coops Limited to put these rotors on the back. And then I have that along with the North race car brackets to put the Thunderbird calipers on it. So anyway, mishmash of stuff. It's all reinstalled. I got the calipers held in place by one lug nut on each side, and the caliper brackets are torqued down to 75 foot-pounds using some thread lock on the mounting bolts. And one thing I do want to add is I did swap the brackets side to side, similar to the brackets I did behind here, the actual caliper mounting brackets. Swap those since I will be swapping the calipers side to side. Rotors are staying where they were, and the pads are going to stay on the side that they came from just because of the way they've been worn in over time. But the caliper and the caliper mounting brackets and then all the adapter brackets, those all have been swapped to get the caliper on the front of the rotor. So next up is going to be getting the calipers swapped side to side. So what I'm going to do is disconnect it at the actual caliper, the line from the caliper, get those swapped around, and I'm hoping these lines, there's enough play where I can maybe bend this backward a little bit if I need the extra reach, and then just hopefully attach the hose to the new caliper. Being that it's pointing towards the back where it really needs to be pointing towards the front, but I can't really do that without redoing these lines and really don't want to do that. So I'm hoping there's going to be enough play with the stainless braided line and maybe possibly loosening the clamp and just kind of angling it back a little bit, where I will be able to make this work and not have it too tight reaching to the calipers. So fingers crossed, I'm gonna go ahead, start loosening things up and swapping the calipers over, and we will see what we come up with. All right, update time. Here is the passenger side. You can see it's installed. I still haven't torqued the fitting banjo bolt for the hydraulic fitting, but it's installed. I actually got the e-brake cable reinstalled as well. You can see the line does run up and over. I was able to loosen the clamp and move the bracket. I did, you might be able to see, I did have to grind the little clip that holds the line to the bracket just to clear the bracket for my brake kit. You can kind of see there where the indentation is. So depending on what brakes you have, you might have to do that as well. Nothing is like heavily pulling or anything like that. There's still play in the lines and all that. So this is pretty much as good as it's going to get reusing, the existing components. So pretty happy with it. This should work. Like I said, I still need to torque everything, but just wanted to give you an update, show you the one side. I still need to do everything on the other side. Once that is all adjusted and installed, I'll go back through and torque everything, and then it will be time to bleed the braking system. All right, and driver's side is installed as well. Same thing as I did on the other side. I had to do a little grinding to tabs and whatnot for clearance. Brake line's back in, pretty happy. I did go around and torque everything as well. So the calipers are torqued to 20 foot-pounds, as are the hydraulic lines, which are within the spec. You can also see I rerouted the e-brake cables. I've got them tucked between the coilover base and the bracket on both sides, and just kind of running over the axle on the top. I may try and fasten them to like the brake hardware up there just to make sure they're not flopping around or anything like that, but they are also hooked back up to the calipers. You can see the cable end hooked up on both sides. So that is pretty much it as far as reinstalling things. Next on the list, I need to put some brake fluid in the reservoir and hook up the power bleeder and blow some fluid through the lines and get the air out. So that is next on the list. All right, went through and used the Motive power bleeder to blow all the air out of the lines. Got the brakes nice and firm. Everything's good to go, no bubbles, and the pedal is holding where it needs to be. So we are all set there as far as the caliper swap, bleeding of brakes. I cleaned all the fittings up really good. And I keep pumping the pedal. I'll check it again tomorrow, let it sit overnight and see if I notice any signs of leakage. But so far, no leaks, should be all set. All right, it is the next day. Looking on the floor, there were no signs of drips from any of the brake calipers. I looked on the passenger side, everything was still dry on there. Driver's side, I did look and there was like a little bit of brake fluid in this groove here under the bleeder. I'm thinking there was just like a little bit of seepage out of the threads, so I went ahead and grabbed this side. It's a 10 mil socket for the bleeder. The other side's a 7/16. Gotta love these, mismatched aftermarket rebuilt calipers. But anyway, I was able to put a little more torque on it with a 3/8 socket and a 10 mil, or a 3/8 ratchet and a 10 mil socket. So did snug it down a little bit more. I'll check it again tomorrow, but for now I'm going to move on. I think that was pretty much all it needed. It was just a little bit of seepage on the threads. So next on the list, because I am good with the brakes, is I do need to get the differential filled back up. I haven't put anything in that yet. So I'm going to go ahead, grab some fluid, and start getting that filled up. All right, so here is what I'm going to be putting in. I love these Valvoline bags. They make life so much easier. So it is a 75W140 full synthetic. I got the actual premium one, and this does contain the limited slip lubricant that you need. So you really don't need to put friction modifier from Ford in if you're using gear oil that has the friction modifier built into it. So I'm not going to be doing that. With these aftermarket girdle type covers, the fill plug is much higher. You're obviously not filling that amount. You're still only going to fill to the factory amount. So that plug is, right there. You can see the bung. I've actually pulled the plug out already. So you're basically going to fill it so it's just below that. It should be just under 3 quarts. So I'm gonna go ahead, get a couple in, take, check it, put finger in the hole, see where it's at, and then, slowly work it up to the proper level. I will fill through the back hole, which is higher up and you can kind of barely see it because there's a lot more, easier access to get to it. But so you fill through there, but you're still monitoring based on the OEM fill plug there on the back, or well, it would be the front, from the front of the car of the differential housing. So I'm gonna go ahead and start getting things filled up. Well, never fails. No matter how hard you try, this always ends up being a messy job. I only ended up having to put in about 2.5 of the quarts, and that's when it started running out. As you can kind of see there, it's spilling out the back. So I'm gonna let that just drain off, and then I can go ahead and put the plug back in there. I obviously forgot to mention before, I did put the plug in the bottom of the housing drain on the back cover. I put ARP thread sealer on it. I'm gonna go ahead and clean up and put the fill plug on the cover back in using, again, ARP thread sealer. And then once this is draining out the factory hole, same thing, little ARP thread sealer, and put that plug back in place. All right, fill plug is back in place on the back of the cover. I've put the other plug back in, which you can't see, it's on the other side, and then I've cleaned everything up. So we are all done as far as getting gear lube in the back of the the rear end housing. So all set there, on to the next. All right, another day's passed. Next day after work, came out here, and this is the one that was leaking, and it is bone dry. So, yep, just needed to snug down the bleeder, so that is all set. My brakes are good to go. So last thing I want to do in this video is in relation to the e-brake cables. You can see, kind of they were going over the top of the pumpkin. I've got them, going behind the coil over there, and then they go into the back of the caliper based on the caliper being swapped around. What I'm doing, as you can see, I already started, is I got some cushion clamps, and I'm just gonna, I already drilled the hole here, and I'm gonna use a self-tapping screw, hold the clamp in place there. Just this is heavy steel and pretty thick, so I figured pre-drill it with an 1/8 inch before running the self-tapper in it. I'm gonna do the same on the other side. That'll kind of hold this snug, just keep it from flopping around as much. It's pretty much out of the way of the upper arms, so I'm not really worried about it up there. I'll check it once I put load under the differential housing and have the wheels on and I'm setting ride height. I'll look and see where these are laying at that point in time. I don't think there's anything else I'll need to do to hold them up out of the way, but like I said, at that point in time I can double check and see if I need to just kind of clamp them together or something, just to limit the amount that they flop around. So that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and get these things clamped on each side, and I'll come back once that is done. All right, and there it is. The clamps are installed on each side. Just keeps it, kind of in place on the back of the axle. Like I said, once this thing is got wheels on it and I kind of can get it to ride height as far as the axle goes, then I'll see where these cables are gonna lay. Because right now, if you move them, they do flop around up top. So I may try and get some sort of clamp that I can clamp it to the brake line just to eliminate that. I don't think there's really anywhere else I can attach it to, but I'll have to see where the axle sits at ride height, how much play I'll have, and things like that before finalizing how I clamp down those cables. So I think that is where I am going to finish up this video. All right, so that is going to wrap up this video. Definitely got a lot done, and that is a big thing off the checklist as far as getting the rear end rebuilt, getting everything put back together, and having that portion of the car finished. Still need to move forward, deal with the transmission, all the engine leaks, all that fun stuff. So there's still quite a way to go with this project. So that being said, if you want to follow along, if you like what you're seeing, please hit like, please hit subscribe, please hit the notification bell. Subscriptions are a huge help with the channel. Definitely helps it grow. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section below. I do review them and I will reply. I do have a merch store. You should probably see some items below this video, and there is a link in the description. Got some shirts and some other stuff if you're interested in checking it out. Also do have a firearms channel, both on YouTube and Rumble. Links in the description below as well. And that being said, thank you very much for watching, and have a great day.